Good afternoon. We're here today to discuss the impacts of Hurricane Irma. At this time, I'd like to welcome Orange County Sheriff Jerry Demings, Vice Mayor Sipling, our Fire Chief Droz, our Emergency Manager Ron Plummer, and our representatives from OUC and Duke Energy. And now I present Orange County Mayor Teresa Jacobs.
Thank you. This afternoon, I've had the opportunity to spend the afternoon with our Public Safety Director, George Rawls, and our Fire Chief, Otto Droz, and wanted to take in and just see firsthand some of the damage that we've had, and more importantly, to be able to speak to our citizens and residents that were most impacted. You know, we can probably fax pictures or text pictures and get a glimpse, but there's nothing quite the same as being able to talk to people and see how their spirits are. And I'm pleased to say, of course, this is only day one after the hurricane. I'm pleased to say I was very, very encouraged by the positive attitude that everyone had and the way they were hanging in there through what I know will be some trying times ahead of us. We went out to visit the Orla Vista community, and I think many of you all have either been there or you've seen pictures of the flooding, something I've never witnessed since I've moved here to Orange County 25 years ago. And yet, at the same time, we also saw, as I pointed out, we saw some people with a very resilient attitude and in good spirits. And we saw the best of our firefighters and our National Guard, who was deployed here so that they could be sent out to other areas of the state, and got put to work last night and early this morning, rather unexpectedly. But what a godsend it was to have them here, right here in Orange County, and with all their equipment coming to the needs of our local citizens. So from that standpoint, it's uplifting while it's also challenging. I want to talk for just a minute about the curfew. We remain under a curfew here in Orange County until 6 p.m. I understand what it feels like to have cabin fever, and it's obvious that some people are experiencing that. But I do want to warn you that as we've been driving around, we continue to see power lines down, trees blocking roads. Many of our signals are not functional right now, so that people are driving really have to navigate those intersections carefully, and that's the reason we're saying if you don't have to be on the road, if you're not going to or from the hospital, if your job doesn't require you to drive right now, don't drive. And most businesses, by the way, for those of you who have abided by this curfew, it's not much to get out for because nobody's open yet. But we do expect that to change tomorrow as commercial businesses get back to work and we all try to start to resume some sense of normalcy. I talked for a minute about the flooding. Let me mention that we have now 130 individuals and their animals that were rescued last night, and they will probably be with us a little while longer. We may need to find some additional temporary shelter and housing for them until their homes are habitable again. So that's one of the jobs ahead of us. As far as power, I've got both OUC and Duke here to speak to their enormous efforts, but we do have approximately 372 residents and homes of Orange County that are without power. That's about 60%. That's a pretty high percentage rate. So, but I think if you talk to most people, most everybody you talk to is experiencing some or has experienced some power outages. The crews are out surveying right now. We've got public works crews, utilities crews, obviously Duke and OUC have been out surveying, and so we're still in the early stages in terms of recovery. We're at the assessment stage. Orange County Utilities continues to assess our regional water treatment facilities, and they've received several reports of water main and service line breaks that may be affecting customers in certain areas. What I want to ask our citizens to do, if you have had an impact, either you've had a water outage since the storm started, or you're experiencing a noticeable decrease in water pressure, we recommend strongly that you boil your water, and we urge you to call 407-836-2777 to report that information to us. Our assessment looks very positive, but the handful of calls that we've received from isolated areas suggests that we need to keep an eye on all of our water mains. So our citizens, our customers, our residents, our visitors can all be a part of helping us do that. As far as the traffic signals, I mentioned that there are a lot of traffic signals out. We have almost 600 traffic signals across Orange County. Our Public Works Department is out surveying each and every one of them, and by the end of today, we'll have a count on how many traffic signals were out. Within the first 2 hours of surveying, we were running about 50% of the signals out. I don't know if that will hold true. Wouldn't be surprised to see if the number corresponds to power outages, because obviously there's a significant correlation there. I'm going to say what I've said every time. If you are driving on the roads, please use extreme caution. And if you come to an intersection and there's no light, you need to treat it like a four-way stop. Everybody stops. Unfortunately, today, the handful of people that were not abiding by the curfew, most of them were not abiding by the four-way stop either. So I continue to be concerned about the life and safety of our citizens who are on the roadways. I suspect that when we return to more normal activity tomorrow, that we will have a larger number of citizens that remember that four-way stop rule. But it only takes one to cause an accident and take a life. So please stop at every single traffic signal if there's no light working. As far as debris, we've gotten a number of calls, understandably, from people wanting to know what they can do and how they can get rid of the debris in their yard. One of those people was my husband. I think that call came at like 6 o'clock in the morning. I wish the man would learn to sleep in a little. But I'm sure he's like a lot of people who just want to get back to life and back to normal. So what I can tell you is that we have emergency debris contracts in place for just such a situation. We anticipate beginning to collect debris in about the next 24 hours. If you live in one of our cities, one of our City of Orlando or one of our other cities and towns here in Orange County, you'll need to check with them on how their debris pickup will work. For us, tomorrow we hope to announce more details about the debris removal process. Additionally, we will be opening 10 sites for citizens by the end of day tomorrow. So for those of you who are impatient and don't want to wait for us to get to you, we completely understand, and we'll give you the sites where you can drop off your debris, including information you're going to need about how to cut up your trees that may have fallen down and how to bundle things together. We'll have a lot more information, and we'll be posting it on our website. As we've discussed before, we've had approximately 4,000 individuals now that have chosen to stay with us in one of our shelters and 200 animals. I know the residents that are in our shelters are very anxious to get back home. We still have trees, debris, down power lines, as well as our traffic signals out. So we are asking everybody for a little bit more patience and to get as many people back to their homes as we can tomorrow, to the extent that their homes are livable, and that especially our special needs patients that are our special needs persons that are at our shelters, we want to make sure when they return home that they've got power and that they're in a safe environment. OUC, the Orange County Convention Center, we discussed this yesterday, but I am so proud that we have been able, as the second largest convention center in the nation, to act as the staging area for the federal, state, and local resources. And we not only are the staging area for the resources, but we're also the staging area for logistics. And unbeknownst to me, when I was down there yesterday with many members of the media, we were also host to a wedding, a military wedding, and so some of us missed that, but I think, if I'm not mistaken, our county photographer might have gotten some pictures. So never ceases to amaze you what people in Orlando will do, does it? And a wonderful event, I'm sure that it was. Roadways and transportation, we've gotten notice from Lynx. They indicated that they're prepared to be back and running as soon as the curfew lifts, which will be this afternoon again at 6 o'clock. And a few public safety announcements. I'm going to call on Ron Plummer, our emergency manager, to talk about the things you need to remember immediately after a hurricane. Ron, there you go. You'll come forward.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon. Just a few safety tips. I was with you this morning, and we remind you of a few things, so I want to reiterate a few more. We got to remember, we've been without power, so your food in your refrigeration will spoil. So you have to be reminded to take a look at all your spoiled food and we want you to discard it properly by putting it in your trash and disposing of it that way. Also, as the power is restored, which it will be restored momentarily, you will have power surges. So you have your computers, your electronic TVs, and other devices. You want to make sure they're protected. So you should unplug these devices until the power is restored back on, and then you can plug them back up properly and turn them on to keep from losing your valuables that way. Once again, your power companies, when your lines to your home from the power source of your power company is your responsibilities. If those lines break, power can be restored in your community. If you don't have it in your home, you need to take a look outside and make sure that you don't have a disconnect from the power source at the end of your home property to your house, because that will have to be repaired, and it has to be repaired by a licensed electrician. I talked this morning about carbon monoxide poisoning. Again, generators, gas, and charcoal grills can cause that. So a lot of you all will want to cook food right now while the power is out, and that's okay, but make sure you do it safely. Do it outside in a ventilated area, and make sure you don't leave the coals burning where they can get or children can get in them, or they can start a fire. So we want you to dispose of that. And then finally, there's a lot of debris maybe in your yard, and you want to try to cut it up and make it easier to move to the curb. So you may be using power tools, chainsaws, and some other tools that may cause injury. We don't want you to use safety in using these tools. Be careful for kickbacks on power tools. If you're not used to using one, practice on smaller pieces of wood and practice safety in using them. We want you to be safe. Again, more deaths happen after the storm, during recovery, than it does during a storm. So we want you to continue to be safe, and we want to keep our deaths down. Thank you. Mayor?
And we're going to hear now from Sheriff Demings talk a little bit about keeping the peace and keeping our community safe. Sheriff?
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon. Let me also reflect on this day, a day of remembrance for all of us here in the United States of America, as we reflect back to September 11th, 2001. As a public safety official, on that day, I can tell you it was an important day, a historic day for Americans, a day in which we lost a lot of first responders on that day, as well as thousands of other individuals. And I was proud to be a law enforcement officer on that day, and I'm proud to be a law enforcement officer on this day as well. I have to say, in the last few days, I'm proud of the work that all of our first responders have done in this community, as they have worked diligently to keep you safe. I'm proud of one of my own. One of my deputy sheriffs has been battling cancer, and she came to work to keep the citizens of Orange County safe. And so I appreciate her efforts, and I'm saying that publicly because we have many first responders who would do the same thing to put their lives on the line to save our citizens. Having said that, we've been fairly clear to you that as we now recover from this storm, there are still some safety issues that cause us concern in this community, and the curfew is in place to assist us to be able to protect you and help you stay safe as well. And so we still have many, many traffic signals that are out throughout Orange County, and it's really, really important that you heed the message that Mayor Jacobs talked about. With over 372,000 homes or places without power, that's significant. And so for us, there are businesses that are not yet back functional. We are working in the law enforcement field to make certain that we keep those businesses and protect those businesses as best as we can. So we're asking you to be patient. I will reiterate the message that the mayor gave you about if you come to one of these intersections where there is no traffic signal that is operational, we do want you to stop at those intersections and treat it, as she indicated, much like it's a four-way stop. Everybody is better off when you do that, and all the indications that we have gotten is that the primary cause for these traffic signals being out is because of the lack of power. You're going to hear from our power officials, and they'll talk to you about the probability of when power may be returned. But suffice it to say, this evening at 6, the curfew will be lifted here in Orange County. Until that time, the curfew is designed to focus on individuals who prey on others, on some of the closed businesses or some of the places where people have been evacuated. We don't want to have looting here in Orange County. We have arrested several individuals already today in the act of going and burglarizing or vandalizing businesses that were closed. And I said to everyone yesterday and earlier this morning, we were not going to tolerate that, and that's what we meant. And so we're going to continue being focused there. But if you're a patient in a hospital and you're going to be released, the curfew doesn't really apply to you. That's not our focus. If you are going to work and had a legitimate job, that's not our focus either. You don't have to worry about it for these next few hours. Certainly if you first responders, healthcare workers, and others who are doing your jobs, if you're media, we're not here to make your lives uncomfortable. We are here to make the lives of criminals uncomfortable, and that's who we're talking about at this point for the remainder of the curfew today. So we do appreciate this community for standing with us, and we look forward to getting back to some sense of normalcy in this community. And we realize that the sooner that we lift the curfew, that can begin to be accomplished in our community. So thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. And the Sheriff pointed out something I think we all need to remember, and that is we would not live in the civil and safe society we live in today if it weren't for those men and women who commit themselves and risk their lives every day. That includes our law enforcement officers and our fire rescue personnel. And I want to hear from our Fire Chief, Otto Droz, because we had addressed the public yesterday about the need that we have for the public to stay off the streets and be safe for themselves so that we don't put our own folks here at risk. And I was so proud of the job that they did last night in responding to a couple of emergencies. Chief Droz?
Sure. Certainly, this has been one of those events to where we actually see the community come together. The sheriff mentioned the anniversary of 9/11, and certainly this is emblematic of how public safety comes together for the greater good of the community. As of last night at 10 p.m., Fire Rescue saw a 200% increase in the amount of calls that normally come in during a 24-hour period. That started with a majority of those most dangerous calls happening at 2 a.m. That's when a lot of the flooding started. That's when the sinkhole in the building started, and our folks took it upon themselves, knowing the dangers, to go out there. And that is very similar to what happens across this country and what happened in New York City the day that many firefighters and police went into those buildings knowing that they were putting themselves at risk and had the potential of not coming home. In this case, all our firefighters are safe. They were able to protect and save many lives within our community. The number of rescues that were pulled out of the floodwaters is just a Herculean effort. And in fact, when I was speaking to those crews, they were at the end of their scheduled shift, and they told me, Chief, we're ready to go. You tell us where and when, and we're ready to go and make a difference within our community. And that's what really makes me proud to be part of this organization and this community, that time and time again, from Hurricane Matthew to the Pulse incident to Hurricane Irma, when needed, we come together, and this community is stronger for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. And the folks on the team behind me are, I think, coming up on the end of their third shift, maybe starting their fourth shift. Group has been up around the clock, as you might imagine, for the last roughly 30 hours being prepared and responding. We're really glad that we're joined here by Roseanne Harrington with OUC, Orlando Utilities Commission, as well as Lee Friedman with Duke Energy. I know the thing on top of mind with everybody is, when's my power coming on? And these are the folks who have the hard job of assessing and responding to not just what's happening here, but what's happening throughout the state. Roseanne, if I can ask you to just give us some stats and tell us what your process is.
Thank you, Mayor Jacobs. At this moment, OUC has about 140,000 customers without power. That's about 60% of our customers. Crews were out early this morning assessing damage and restoring power to critical infrastructure like wastewater plants, police, fire, hospital. We brought in hundreds of crews from outside, all over the United States, from Michigan, Kansas City, Massachusetts, everywhere, and tree trimmers and line techs. I just want to put this storm in perspective. There's 6 million people without power in the state of Florida right now. This is the largest storm to hit Florida ever. And the utilities are saying this is going to be the largest utility restoration and rebuild project in history. This is enormous. So we're asking customers to please be patient. The reporting, when you report an outage, we ask that you call one time. There's a lot of traffic on the lines right now. To contact OUC, you would call 407-423-9018. Again, you can look outside and see that there's still high gust winds and a lot of rain, so we will be experiencing some outages the rest of the day. You can just rest assured that we're doing everything possible to restore power in a safe and quick manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Roseanne. And next we're going to hear from Lee Friedman with Duke Energy.
Thank you, Mayor. First off, I'd like to echo Orlando Utilities by saying if you have an outage and you've not reported it, please contact us. You can do that one of three ways. You can visit, if you have a smartphone, you can visit duke-energy.com. If you have a phone that can text the word OUT, O-U-T, to 57801. And you can also call us. And the number is 800-228-8485. We have about 226,000 outages in Orange County. We have about 1.3 million outages throughout our Florida territory. We have 9,000 resources here to help. That includes line crews, vegetation management specialists, damage assessors, and other support personnel. Right now, we have damage assessors out throughout the county assessing the damage, seeing what resources are needed to restore power, and then sending that information back, and we're deploying crews to restore power. I want to make sure everyone remains safe. If there's a down power line in your neighborhood, do not touch it, do not get near it. Consider it live, even if it may not be. Duke Energy will respond, same with the county. And that's all I can say. But if you do have an outage, you have not reported it, please contact us, and I'll give you that 800 number one more time. It's 800-228-8485. Thank you. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. That concludes the press briefing. We'd be pleased to answer any questions anyone might have.
Just real quick, how many outages for Duke Energy one more time?
I'm sorry.
How many outages for Duke?
Can you come back up to the
Yes,
mic?
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right now in Orange County, we have about 226,000 outages. That's about 60% of our customers. Overall, in Florida, Duke Energy Florida has about 1.3 million outages. And to put that in perspective, we serve about 1.8 million customers in Florida.
For members of both OUC and Duke, can you speak to how soon you anticipate power being restored for some customers and how long it will take to get power restored to all customers?
I think Duke will agree. We're asked that question a lot, and I know people have been without air conditioning and they're hot, and They'd like to know when the power is going to be restored. We really are out there today assessing the damage, and tomorrow we'll have a better idea the damage to our own system, and we can give you an idea of how long it's going to take for the entire restoration process. So I really think we need until tomorrow to assess the damage.
We've actually already restored some customers. Our linemen are out there, as well as our damage assessors. Our linemen, if there's a fix that they can do pretty fast, easily, without new poles or wires, they will make that fix and get customers back online. Is a very small percentage of customers that are back online right now, but we will work through the night to continue to assess damage. Our customers should expect outages that could last upwards of a week, maybe more. It's not just about restoring power. In some places, it's about rebuilding the system. So we have all of our resources, all hands on deck out, assessing damage and restoring power.
Is there any indication of what led to the flooding incident at Ola Vista?
We know that area is a low-lying area to begin with. I know that our Public Works Department anticipated that we needed to drain the lake, and we did that. We believe that the downstream flow through Shingle Creek should handle the capacity. But we're looking at all aspects of that to make sure that as we're pumping, and we're pumping about 40,000 gallons per minute, we're pumping a lot of water out of there. We just need to make sure that the downstream is open and flowing freely. So we'll have a little better indication as we talk to the water management districts and make sure there's no blockage. We don't have any reason to believe there is, but we have had flooding in that area before. So I would chalk it up to nature, but if we learn of any other obstructions, we'll certainly let you know.
You also said that you believe this storm was worse than Charlie. What are some of the reasons, we talked about also the outages, what are some of the other reasons you say that this is worse than Charlie?
For us, it was worse because if you remember with Charlie, we had a more contained area. The impacts weren't throughout Orange County as broadly as these are. We didn't have the same level of power outages. We didn't have the same level of downed power lines. We didn't have near as many traffic signals that weren't functioning. So I think it was broader than what we experienced before. And then you look at it on a regional and statewide level. Again, Charlie was more isolated. We did take the brunt of it, but resources were able to come to focus all on Orange County and and Osceola County, whereas now the resources that the state and federal government are deploying are going to have to work to address impacts across the state, not just the impacts that we've experienced.
For Mayor Jacobs and Sheriff Demings, the curfew remains in place. As we drove over here, it seems like every minute there are more and more cars on the road. What is your level of concern about crashes taking place and general safety on the road?
Well, we're certainly concerned about that, and you'll see law enforcement officers perhaps beginning to man some of the intersections. We'll be using variable messaging at various locations throughout the county to warn the public to slow down, treat them as if they're four-way stops. We're working with the traffic engineers of the various county and municipalities here to make the roadways safe. But again, our main concern about keeping the curfew in place until 6 p.m. as related to the fact that we really have so many businesses that are not yet back functional. And so we're trying to make certain that is all taken care of before that curfew is lifted. We only just have just a few hours left, and so our personnel are out working diligently to make certain that we're able to execute our plan at 6 p.m. today. Yeah.
Just a big picture, what can the Orange County residents expect now over the next few weeks, months going forward?
Well, I certainly hope we're not talking about months in terms of recovery effort. But over the next several days, I think they're going to have to be patient as power is restored. Over the next several weeks, we're going to be cleaning up debris as address the impacts of downed tree limbs, et cetera. So I think we can expect the impacts from that. Certainly we have some isolated areas like the community in Orla Vista that is, there are going to be individuals there that are going to be reaching out for FEMA assistance to help them get back on the feet. We saw homes that not only were under, 3 feet of water, but also cars that were almost completely immersed in the flood. So we know there are going to be financial impacts to isolated communities that are going to have to be addressed as well.
Or Mr. Plummer, you referenced that a lot of people are going to be doing things with which they're unfamiliar without power. Are there resources that the county is providing for those people, whether they should go online or call a number for some guidance on how to handle certain situations?
Well, yeah, we're going to provide guidance when it comes to trash pickup, how to separate your trash for all those things. But as far as when it comes to safety things, there's courses at your Home Depots, your Lowe's that can provide safety courses for different type of tools. So, and you can go online nowadays and learn it, but it's best if you can go to the professionals, learn how to use those tools where you purchase them from. They have more they're more familiar with those tools and the safety that it takes to operate them properly.
I have a question about the flooding and the curfew. I had one person call and say that their boyfriend is trying to get out because their home was flooded, and they were told to go back to the house. They couldn't be on the road. If they're trying to get out of a situation like that, are they allowed to leave and get the safety?
Absolutely, and if that happened last night, and I realize that everybody isn't going to be tuned in all the time, but one of the things that, if you'll recall, I stressed last night was that if you are living in an environment that you believe is unsafe, and this was, of course, before the heavy winds started, that you needed to leave now. Having said that, I think it's a very tough call in the middle of the storm. When the winds are at their strongest, whether or not leaving on your own and driving your own car to a shelter is the smarter thing to do, or staying there, which is the reason that fire rescue went out to that community and evacuated people, because they have much heavier vehicles, and I would much rather see them on the road transporting our citizens than our citizens trying to evacuate themselves.
And can we talk a little bit more about any storm-related deaths or injuries at this point?
We know we had a traffic fatality yesterday. We're going to have to wait for the ME's office to declare whether that is officially a storm-related death. As I know you heard our fire chief mention, there were no other vehicles involved. So it would lead one to think that it was related to the weather conditions, but we need to wait for the ME's office to make an official determination of what was the cause of death.
But no word on
Any others? Were there any others?
Yeah, we've run several calls on people in the recovery already that have had some level of injuries. Of course, we had the one that fell from the 4th story yesterday as well that we transported. And to the question on how the community can be helped, really, there are CERT teams out there that have been, the community emergency response teams that have been clearing some of the roadways, and they've been trained to use the different chainsaws and some of those. And then fire rescue is going to be out there. We have 150 chainsaws distributed throughout the county, and we have teams being put together to put on the blue tarps in those most affected areas. So a lot of the people that need help are going to get help. If their roofs are leaking, we want to help them. They can call 311, and we're more than happy to go out and put those blue tarps and help them clearing some of the access to their properties. And all our people are trained in using the proper equipment the right way.
A question about the sinkhole in western Orange County. Do we know that that's an actual classic, definitive sinkhole, and other concerns about, or have been reports of, other similar situations?
No, we don't. We have not been able to confirm that that's a sinkhole. I think it was very late at night when it was first reported. We're having to assess whether that's a sinkhole or just a very, very large washout. Regardless of what the nature of the cause is, we do know that the size of that cavity up against the footings for the multifamily housing it was a very significant health and public safety risk, and I'm glad our teams could get out there and that they had the resources and were able to get there last night to get people safely into better housing until we can assess it and until the owner of the property can assess the risk factor. If you had a chance, I don't know how many had a chance, I think we had 4 large industrial type of air conditioning units that fell into it. It was quite a large cavity.
Last question for me, I think.
Oh, good.
What area?
Might be the last question for everybody.
What area are you most worried about right now when it comes to cleanup after going around?
To be honest with you, I personally haven't been able to visit every area in Orange County. I'm hoping to get back out after this press briefing and see a little bit more. So I can't answer the question, what area that we're most concerned about. And hopefully by the end of the day we'll have a more complete assessment. I think the thing I'm most worried about is what are people going to do from this point forward, not what happened before. So one of the questions was about using chainsaws and other heavy equipment. And my rule of thumb, if there's any doubt in your mind, if you know how to use something safely, don't. When in doubt, just don't. As well as, my concern about the evening hours and people getting out and driving. It's difficult enough to navigate an intersection without a signal during the day. Navigating it at night is more dangerous. So I am much more concerned about our whole community using good judgment and having the ability to just stay put is difficult. We love our freedom, and I do too. And just stay put, stay safe for another day or two.
Last one, Mayor. What about something like an evening curfew? If lights are out at intersections and it's the night, how much more dangerous is that?
And that's a conversation that the sheriff and I both had. It's a balance between the fact that we've got businesses that would like to get back to serving, and we've got to serving water and gas and other necessities, allowing them to proceed forward, and at the same time recognizing the public safety of driving at night. The sheriff is going to try to man some of the more busy intersections, and we've got the Florida Highway Patrol that's going to help with other busy intersections. And the good news is that people generally have pretty good judgment. I think what we've seen today is very few cars, but the cars that are there feel comfortable going through the intersections. The more cars, the more you see people becoming cautious. We have a pretty good level of common sense. Not every one of us. So when you're out driving, remember the next guy might not have the same common sense that you do, and be cautious. Thank you.
For both energy reps, everyone obviously wants to know when their power's coming back on. Can you provide insight into how you prioritize what areas get worked on before certain other areas?
Sure. Our first priority is to get emergency responders back up and running. So we're talking about hospitals, fire stations, police stations, other critical facilities like that. From there, we start restoring power to the most customers, so the areas where there's the largest density of outages, so cities and whatnot. But our priority right now is those first responders, those critical facilities.
Thank you for your time. This concludes our briefing.